Migration epic, Uyghur Turks. On the banks of the Orkhon River today, there are the remnants of a city and the ruins of a palace, believed to have been called Ordu-Balıg in ancient times. The migration epic is inscribed on one of the monuments in front of the palace ruins in this city. According to Hüseyin Namık Orkun, these inscriptions were read and translated by experts brought from China during the reign of the Mongol Khan Ögedei. According to the records in Chinese and Iranian sources, the migration epic has two different versions. These two versions do not contradict each other but complement each other. The Iranian version is closer to historical facts and serves as a narrative of the Uighurs adopting the Manichean religion. This Iranian version is found in Juvayni's work called Tarih-i Cihangüşa. The protagonist mentioned in the epic, Bögü Khan, was a Uighur Khan who lived in the 8th century AD. In 763, Bögü Khan summoned the priests of the Manichean religion and listened to them, accepting this religion as the official religion of the Uighur State. Bögü Khan, the hero of the legend below, is the Khan who embraced and propagated the Mani religion. The acceptance of the Mani religion by Bögü Khan is narrated in the variant of the migration epic according to Iranian sources. In this context, the legend should have been based on the principles of the Mani religion in terms of both the subject and the beliefs it relied on. However, this is not entirely the case. The steppe culture predominates in the migration epic, and the main motifs of the legend are enriched with Central Asian elements, pushing aside the beliefs of old Turkic, Manichaeism, and Buddhism almost outside the legend. The migration epic depicts the ideal of being a world empire, which laid the foundation and development of Turkish epics. With the incorporation of this ideal, seen in the legends of Uighur Khan, Alp Ertunga, Afrasiab, and Ergenekon, into the migration epic, a distinct unity in the structure of Turkish epics is observed. Despite appearing to have been established at different times with different names, the influence of the same tribes in the formation of the epics proves that these epics converge from the same source. One of the most important sources regarding the migration epic, mentioned many times in Chinese and Iranian sources, is the work called Tarih-i Cihangüşa, written by the Iranian historian Juvayni. Another significant source is the tombstone inscription erected for Timur Buka, Iron Bull, one of the last Uighur Khans. The text of this inscription later passed into Chinese histories as a summary, and some European writers also summarized this information from secondary sources. The migration epic is one of the most important epics in Turkish literature. This epic reflects the historical and cultural identity, beliefs, traditions, values, lifestyle, worldview, national spirit, heroism, sorrows, joys, hopes, and dreams of the Turks. The epic contributes to the Turks finding their own identity, knowing themselves, trusting themselves, developing themselves, expressing themselves, defending themselves, and sustaining themselves. The epic is a bridge for the Turks from the past to the future, emphasizing the importance of preserving and developing the legacy they inherited from their ancestors and passing it on to future generations. The epic demonstrates how crucial love for the homeland, nation, flag, language, culture, religion, morality, justice, freedom, peace, and humanity is. It narrates the importance of Turks being united, supporting each other, respecting each other, showing love to each other, trusting each other, helping each other, looking at each other with tolerance, feeling responsible towards each other, being honest with each other, being just towards each other, being merciful towards each other, and being self-sacrificing towards each other. The epic emphasizes that the Turks are Turks everywhere, at all times, in all conditions, in all difficulties, in all dangers, in all impossibilities, in all hopelessness, in all helplessness, in all loneliness, in all pain, in all joy, in all success, in all failure, in all life, and in all death. The epic has been preserved and transmitted to new generations wherever the Turks migrated. Migration epic. This epic is a Uyghur epic and serves as an extension of the Turkish epic. The migration epic is a folk epic that narrates the Uyghurs' migration from their homeland to other places. This epic reflects the historical and cultural values of the Turks, their struggles with the Chinese and Mongols, and the difficulties and successes they experienced. The migration epic is a continuation of the Turkish epic. In the Turkish epic, it is told that the Uyghurs originated from 5 sacred children sent by God. In the migration epic, it is narrated that the Uyghurs were punished by God when they gave their sacred stone to the Chinese, leading to famine and drought in their land, forcing them to leave their homes. Although it is known that there are two different versions of the migration epic in Chinese and Iranian sources, they are actually complementary rather than contradictory. The Iranian version is closer to historical information and also serves as a narrative of the Uyghurs accepting Manichaeism. Despite some differences between these two sources, they are, in fact, complementary. They are forced to migrate. According to Chinese sources on the migration epic, in the Uyghur land, where the Tugla and Salinj rivers meet, there is a hill called Kumlanku. It was also called Hulan Mountain. In the Hulan Mountains, two trees grew very close to each other. One was a beech tree. One night, a blue sacred light fell from the sky onto the beech tree. The people living between the two rivers saw this light and watched it with awe. Later, a swelling occurred in the trunk of the tree, and the divine light stayed on the swelling for 9 months and 10 days. During the time the sacred light stayed on the beech tree, the trunk of the beech tree grew and swelled. Beautiful songs started to come from there. When night fell, the surroundings were illuminated from 30 steps away from the tree. One day, the trunk of the tree suddenly split open, and 5 small tents, resembling 5 small rooms, appeared. Each small room had a child inside. These children were the sacred children sent by God. There was a pacifier hanging above the mouths of the children, and they were sucking milk from these pacifiers. The people and leaders of the people showed great respect for these sacred children born of light. The people raised these children. The youngest of the children was named Sungur Taijan, followed by Katur Taijan. The third was Turk Taijan. The fourth was Us Taijan, and the fifth was named Bögü Taijan. People who believed that all 5 children were sent by God wanted to make one of them a Khan. Bögü Taijan was the oldest. He appeared more beautiful, more intelligent, and braver than the others. Understanding that Bögü Taijan was superior to all of them, the people chose him as the Khan. With a grand ceremony, they enthroned Bögü Khan. The country became rich, and the people were happy. A long time passed. A prince named Uyghur Taijan became the Khan. Uyghur Taijan fought a lot with the Chinese. To put an end to these wars, he decided to marry his son Gali Taijan to the Chinese princess Qiulin. After the marriage, Qiulin established her palace on Mount Hatton in Karakoram. Mount Hatton was also called the Mountain of Heavenly Spirits. There were many other mountains around Mount Hatton. One of these mountains was Mount Tonri. South of Mount Tonri was Mount Kutlu. Mount Kutlu was a large rock. One day, the Chinese envoy, along with fortune-tellers, came to Qiulin's palace. They spoke among themselves and said, "The entire prosperity of Mount Hatton depends on Mount Kutlu, this rock. If we want to defeat the Turks, we must take this rock from them." After reaching an agreement among themselves, the envoys went at Gali Khan and said to him, "You married our princess. We have a request from you. The stones of Mount Kutlu are not used by your esteemed country. We will use these stones instead." Without thinking about the consequences and without caring, the new Khan accepted the Chinese's request and gave them this rock, which was a part of his homeland. However, Mount Kutlu was a sacred rock. The happiness of the entire Uyghur land depended on this rock. This magical stone represented the indivisibility of the Turkish homeland. If given to the enemy, this unity would be shattered, and all the happiness of the Turks would be lost. The Khan gave the rock, but it was not the kind of rock that could be easily uprooted and taken away. Understanding this, the Chinese piled charcoal around the rock and set it on fire. When the rock became red-hot, they poured vinegar on it and shattered it to pieces. They took each piece, carried them to their country. After this event, disasters befell the Uyghurs. It happened then as it happened. All the creatures, domestic and wild animals of Turkestan, everything that breathed, cried out in their own languages, mourning the giving of the rock to the enemy. 7 days later, this thoughtless Khan, whose sin was unforgivable, died. However, the death of this Khan did not save the country from disaster. A rock given away for the sake of a Chinese princess caused the calamity of Turkestan. The people did not see peace and tranquility. Rivers dried up one after another. The water of the lakes turned into vapor and disappeared. The lands cracked, and crops no longer sprouted. There was famine and drought. They had to leave their homes and migrate. After days, one of the grandsons of Bögü Khan sat on the throne as the Khan. At that time, everything, living and non-living, domestic and wild, all over the country, suddenly shouted, "Migration! Migration!" It was a cry that came from deep within, full of lament, sorrowful, with hands clasped over the chest. Hearts could not bear it. The Uyghurs considered this as a divine command. They gathered, set out on the roads. They began to migrate towards unknown lands, leaving their homes. Finally, they came to a place called Turfan and stopped there. and the voices were silenced. In this place where the voices were silenced, they settled, established 5 districts, and named this place Bögü. They lived here and multiplied. Migration epic according to Iranian sources. In the Uyghur land, there were 2 rivers formed by the Karakoram streams. They were called Togla and Salange. These waters flowed and converged in Kamlankyu. Between these 2 rivers, there were 2 trees. One was a fusik tree, and the other was a tur tree. The leaves of these trees never fell, whether in summer or winter. These 2 trees grew between 2 mountains. One day, a light descended from the sky between these 2 trees. The branches on both sides began to grow slowly. The people were astonished, and with great respect, they approached. When they reached the trees, sweet and beautiful melodies started to reach their ears. Every night, a light descended here, and around the light, lightning flashed 30 times. One day, people saw 5 separate tents set up there. In each tent, a child was sitting. In front of each child, there were pacifiers filled with enough milk to feed them. The floor of the tent was covered with silver from top to bottom. Leaders and people from all tribes rose and came to see this strange phenomenon. When they saw the scene, they knelt down in respect, saluting. They entered the tents, took the children outside, and handed them over to wet nurses and caretakers for nourishment and upbringing. When the children grew up and began to speak, they asked the Uighurs about their parents. The Uighurs pointed to the 2 trees. When the children saw the trees, they kneeled in front of them, showing the same respect a child would show to their father, kissing the ground. In response, the trees spoke and said, "Children adorned with good manners and qualities become like this. They show respect to their parents. May your lives be long, your names great, and your fame enduring." All the tribes living nearby showed great respect to these children, treating them like the sons of rulers. Upon returning to the city, each child was given a name. The eldest was named Sungur Taijan, the second was named Katur Taijan, the third was Tukul Taijan, the fourth was Taijan, and the 5th was named Bögü Taijan. Those who witnessed the sacred state of their birth decided that one of them should be chosen as the Khan. Among the children, Bögü Taijan stood out in beauty, height, patience, willpower, and foresight compared to the others. Additionally, he knew the languages and writings of all nations. Everyone agreed that he should be chosen as the Khan. Bögü Khan ascended to the throne with a grand ceremony. Bögü Khan began to rule the country with justice. His men, followers, and soldiers multiplied rapidly. During his reign, 3 crows helped Bögü Khan. These crows knew all the languages of the world. Whenever an event occurred, they informed Bögü Khan. One night, while Bögü Khan was sleeping, the vision of a girl appeared in front of his window, waking him up. Bögü Khan was frightened but pretended not to see the girl and acted as if he were still asleep. The second night, the girl came again, and Bögü Khan repeated the same actions. Morning came. Khan consulted with his vizier. On the 3rd night, the girl came again. Following the advice of his vizier, Bögü Khan took the girl and went to Akadag. Bögü Khan and the girl spoke there until sunrise. For 7 years, 6 months, and 22 days, the girl came to Bögü Khan every night, and they spoke. On the night of their parting, the girl said to Bögü Khan, "From east to west, the entire world will come under your rule. Be vigilant in your affairs and work well." The next day, Bögü Khan gathered his armies. He entrusted 300,000 soldiers to Sungur Taijan, sending him on a raid to the Mongol countries. He assigned 100,000 soldiers to Katur Taijan, sending him to the land of Tangut. Tukul Taijan was sent towards Tibet. Bögü Khan himself, with 300,000 soldiers, turned towards Haitei equals China. He left Taijan as the acting Khan in his place. All of Bögü Khan's armies returned with victories. The wealth, money, and loot they brought back were immeasurable. Bögü Khan had a city named Ordu-Balıg built on the banks of the Orkhon River and made it his capital. All the countries in the east came under the rule of Bögü Khan. One night, Bögü Khan had a dream. In his dream, an old person, dressed in white, with a white band on his head and holding a pine cone-sized jade stone called Yada, appeared. The old person approached Bögü Khan, gave him the Yada stone, and said, "If you keep this stone, you will conquer all 4 corners of the world under your people's rule." That night, Bögü Khan's chief vizier also had the same dream. Upon waking, Bögü Khan immediately gathered his armies and set off towards the west. He reached Turkestan. Here, he found a place covered with lush grass and flowing waters, a perfect spot. He decided to settle there, establishing the city of Balasagun. Bögü Khan's armies spread in all directions, bringing all nations under their rule. There was no one left to stand against the Turks on earth. Bögü Khan decided to return to his homeland and arrived there. During the time, Uyghurs referred to their religious leaders as Kam. Kams ruled over the jinn and made them do what they wanted. Turks and Mongols held Kams in high regard. They would consult Kams before starting any venture and act accordingly. Kams also took care of the sick. The most powerful moments for the Kams were when they established connections with good and evil spirits. In the era of Bögü Khan, Uyghurs sent envoys to the Chinese Khan, requesting the dispatch of religious figures called Divinyan, who understood the Nam books. Nam was the name of the Chinese religious books. The Chinese believed that a person who lived today also lived 1,000 years ago. Individuals knowledgeable in Nam methods came from China. They sat with the Kams, presented their own religious books, and discussed with them. The Kams lost the argument. After this discussion, Uyghurs accepted the new religion brought by China. This religion was Manichaeism.